Hi, I'm Chef Sabrina Tinsley, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to make your own homemade tagliatelle. To make this very simple recipe, you only need 3 ingredients, and that's going to be your all-purpose flour, eggs, and salt. We'll start by pouring our flour on our work surface. Wooden surface is the best, actually, and then you'll just make a little well in the center. Next, we'll crack our eggs into the center of the well. And add a pinch of salt. Next, with a simple fork, we're going to go ahead and start whisking our eggs in the center of the well. First, just kind of breaking up the eggs, and then slowly but surely pulling the flour in from the sides. You want to make sure your well is big enough so that you have room to whisk. Slowly but surely, your mixture is going to start to thicken as you pull more and more flour into your eggs. And you want to take your time with this. There's no rush. Slowly but surely working your flour into the eggs. Eventually you'll have a nice gooey consistency such as this, and we're going to start working in a little bit more flour at a time to get it to a point where we can start to use our hands to knead the dough. Okay, so now the dough is very thick, fairly thick, and I'm going to go ahead and start working it with my hands. Get a little bit of flour on my hands and gently start kneading it. At this point, you can start working in more flour at a time. So quarter turn up, and then you roll forward. Quarter turn, roll forward. Once you get it to a consistency where you're kneading it and it's no longer kneading flour and it's not sticking to the board, then you know it's ready. And we're going to go ahead and let that rest, set it aside, wrap it in plastic and set it aside for about 30 minutes to let it rest and allow the flour to hydrate. Okay, now that your dough's been resting for about 30 minutes, you'll notice that it's relaxed a little bit. It might feel a lot softer than it did before you rested it. And we're gonna start by cutting off a small piece, and we'll work a small piece at a time. I'm gonna do a third at a time and set these other 2 pieces aside while I start working the first piece. I'm going to give that a little knead. And then dust it with a little bit of my flour. Then we're going to start rolling it out on the pasta machine. Okay, I'm going to make sure my pasta maker is on the biggest setting, the widest setting, so the rollers are as far apart as possible. I'm going to flatten my dough just a little bit so it can feed through easily, and then catch it on the other side. Dust it with a little bit more flour. Then I'm going to get it just a little bit thinner. So I adjust my pasta maker to make it a little bit thinner and roll it on through. At this point, I'm going to double it over on itself, do a tri-fold, and we're going to start all over again. So I'm going to open it up to the widest setting and then just roll it through again. As you can see, it's getting nice and thin. It's getting thinner, I should say. And it is also kind of shaping up to be a nice little rectangle. I'm going to do one more tri-fold, dust it with flour because it's getting a little bit sticky on the outside. Dust off all the excess flour, flatten the dough out just a little bit, and again on the biggest setting, go go ahead and roll that through. So now I have a nice smooth piece of dough to work with, and it's a nice rectangle. This is the shape that I'm looking for. So now I'm going to start making that dough thinner. So one notch at a time, and then feed it through. One notch, and feed it through. And just keep going until it's as thin as I need it to be. One notch at a time. And now it's getting a little bit sticky, so I'm going to go ahead and dust it with a little bit more flour. So I definitely don't want it to stick to the rollers. Okay, just a little bit of flour. You don't need much. All right, a little bit thinner. Okay. I think probably 2 more notches, and then it's going to be the thickness that I am looking for. Dust it with a little flour. And roll through. Okay. Catch it on the other end. If your dough is really soft, you have to be careful about it gathering up on the bottom side, on this side, because it may start to stick together. So be careful about that. Okay. And the tagliatelle is actually the thickness that I wanted at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and cut strips the length that I want my tagliatelle to be. And I'm going to set that aside on the board, on the wooden board, to dry. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit so it's easier to cut. So this is starting to stick together just a little bit, so I can just gently try to separate that so I can make sure that the tagliatelle comes out the way I want it. So if your dough does start to stick together like this has, you can always just double it over on itself one more time and roll it through again. I'm not going to start at the very beginning because this is already pretty thin. So just roll that through. Pop those little bubbles. And there we go. It's definitely easier to work with smaller pieces at a time. Okay, this is perfect. And then we're going to start with our next piece and go through the same process all over again. You're going to want to let your pasta sheets dry on a non-porous surface, so either on a wooden cutting board or on a lint-free cloth. And then we're going to go ahead and cut those on the tagliatelle cutting, which is the bigger of the 2 die that the pasta machine comes with. And you'll want to kind of separate those and dust them with a little bit of flour. And coat them evenly with the flour. And let them continue to dry a little bit on your cutting board. Okay. So you'll feed in your pasta until it catches. Again, separate them and dust with a little flour. Now that all the tagliatelle is cut, I want to let it dry just a little bit longer on my board, and I want to make sure that it's all separated out. This tagliatelle is still a little bit moist, so I would be concerned about it sticking together. So you can add a little bit more flour if you want, but just basically make sure that it's spread out enough so that it can dry without sticking together. Now that the hard part is done, it's time to cook our pasta in salted boiling water. This is only going to take a couple minutes because this is super fresh pasta. Add it all at once. And just give it a little stir. Now that my pasta is cooked and strained, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my sauce. And I'm using ragu, but you could easily use truffle butter or any other sauce that you enjoy. Just coat the noodles with the pasta. Then I'll add Parmigiano Reggiano and serve. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and plate up one portion. Beautiful tagliatelle. Add a little bit of sauce to the top. And now it's time to enjoy our homemade tagliatelle.